All right, Kiss Army, welcome to the KissFAQ podcast. Thank you for giving us your time today and letting us into your head. I hope you don't do any damage. This is a Kiss-related podcast by the board for the board. We hope that you enjoy. Welcome to the KissFAQ podcast. I'm your host, Julian Gill, admin on the KissFAQ message board. And on this week's episode, welcome back, stranger, Joe.
How you doing, people?
Seems just like yesterday, we were talking about hysteria.
That's right. That was a lot of fun.
That was a fun conversation, and of course, go Quakes. Also joining us are the voice of reason, Ken, 69th Blizzard Board, and Marcus Almighty. Mark, congratulations, second single, Project Gemini, kick-ass song. Very much digging it. It's love the lyrics on this one particularly, and it's I keep wondering if I'm going to have to say that's even better than the last one. It's even better than the last one. It's really enjoying it. So congratulations. Anyone who wonders what the hell I'm talking about and why I'm talking about something non-Kiss on a Kiss podcast, well, because I can. And Mark's music's really cool. So projectgemini.com, and Mark, give us the Bandcamp info on that as well, so people can check you out.
So if you want to check out the singles, you just go to projectgemini.bandcamp.com, and then if you just put /releases, it'll take you right to those separate releases for ease of checking it out. And like Julian said, the www.projectgemini.com is also a good spot to check out stuff, and that was done by our fabulous Julian Guild at a fabulous website. I thank you again for that.
Yeah, wait till you get the bill.
Exactly, but it's worth it, every cent.
Yeah, so hand-coded HTML, old school. All right, let's get into some Kiss stuff. Behind me, you might see the door, and I dropped the dime on it, and it's 8 feet tall, a backdrop, which is coming to Atlanta. So if you like the back of the Odyssey book, that wonderful artwork Nils did for Tim and my book, and you want to get a photo in front of that door, well, this backdrop will be available for you to pose in front of, and as long as you keep your clothes on, you're welcome to take photos in front of it in Atlanta at the expo in January. So I'm going to use it for the shows until then because it looks better than that piece of shit I printed out on paper using the plotter. So today's topic is, it's kind of the end of Rocktober. And as we get towards the end of this month, what is the album that came out around that time in 1982? The album that everyone always loves talking about, and we're going to touch on some of the other October releases, Creatures of the Night. And everyone should be doing devil's horns, silly faces, and going all Halloween on us. So, let's just go around on everyone's first impressions of that album when they first heard it and the kinds of things that immediately they think of when they hear that album mentioned. Joe, let's start with you.
Okay, first thing I think of is how Kiss was so dead in the water when it was released. And I was a freshman at the University of Iowa. And I went to the record store and was literally the only guy at the University of Iowa who bought the album. And I was a complete outcast because I liked Kiss. Now, the background leading up to that album, especially being from Chicago too, is I Was Made for Loving You killed the band in Chicago. They couldn't draw until the reunion tour. Subsequent tours, I had to drive up to Milwaukee on the Animalized tour because they had to cancel. They didn't have to sell enough tickets. So they had Dynasty, then they went to Unmasked, which was pop and weak sales, and then the whole weirdness of The Elder, one of the greatest musical mysteries of all time. And then they returned to their hard rock roots. And what I remember before the album came out is I used to subscribe to a lot of fanzines. I was into a lot of the new wave of British heavy metal and a lot of the underground heavy metal scenes. And there was a guy named Bob Muldowney out on Long Island, and he had a fanzine called Kick-Ass Monthly. And Kiss was so desperate, Paul Stanley did an interview with this small fanzine. And he talked about the Creatures album. He talked about Ace Frehley still being in the band. Now, I know they had to have that facade to have their Polygram record deal with the 3 original members, but he was talking about a subsequent tour, and he specifically said that Rocket Ride would be on the set list, Julian, and I know that's your favorite and one of my favorites of all time. So I was really excited about the album coming out, them returning to their heavy metal roots. But when the album came out, it just fizzled. They were dead to rights. Now, as time has progressed, there you go. There's the video. As time has progressed, the album has grown and it has become a classic and very popular. You hear "I Love It" loud all the time at sporting events, at least the drum beat. So those were my first impressions when I got the album. And it fizzled when it was first released, but now, 35 years later, it is looked at as a heavy metal classic and one of KISS's best studio releases.
And we'll get into why it's looked that way in a few moments. Mine, obviously, with my entry point being 1985, I've said it before, my entry point for this album was the Bruce Kulick Unmasked cover, because it was still kind of new in stores at that time. It had come out in the middle of 85, and end of 85 is when I became a fan. And so that was the copy that I saw in stores. I always thought it was good, and but in terms of where it fell into my listening experience, because I hadn't gone through those hard years of Dynasty, into Unmasked, into The Elder, into Creatures, I just don't see it as in the same way that anyone who's a fan from the original era will be able to see it. So for me, it's just a really strong heavy metal album at a time where I was buying albums all out of sequence, be it Motley Crue, be it Van Halen, be it Wasp. So it doesn't really stand out to me in any way other than being a really good album. It wasn't like a resurgence for me because I was enjoying Asylum, which was a heavy album. So it wasn't dynamically different. Ken, you're from the old school as well. So what was how did you encounter it?
Yeah, well, like Joe, I went through the period of Dynasty. Even though I like Dynasty, Unmasked was going for a little bit too much pop. Then The Elder was a total about face. Is like, what did they do here? Though I love The Elder in its own right, as it's as a concept or whatever they were trying to do. I still love that, but so I didn't know what the heck was going to happen next when they're going to release the next album. You didn't know where they're going to go because they changed from the hard rock roots, like from rock and roll over, which I feel is the best Kiss sound. I was hoping, that they'd get back to something like that, but when I put that on, I thought, holy cow, they did it. They're back. They're back finally to what they should be doing, and that was just great. I didn't follow the sales so much at the time of Creatures. Obviously, we know it didn't sell well, along with the tour. Didn't do too well either. But man, I was so happy. That they were back. I was like, this is it. They're back to what they're supposed to be doing and how they should sound, or sound in the heavy metal kind of world.
Excellent. Mark, like me, you come along in the KISS story a little bit later than some of these albums. Where and how does it figure for you, and for what you were listening to at the time that you encountered it in terms of other bands?
Well, this record, while it's my number 2 favorite record from KISS period, I got to this record really late. Actually, one of the last records I actually discovered from the catalog. I had known a lot of the earlier stuff because of my sister, as I mentioned quite a few times before, and I had gotten the 45 of Lick It Up and stuff like that. But for some reason, this record sort of skipped over our household for some reason. I don't know why my sister didn't have it at the time. But how I discovered it, funny enough, was I was in one of my other bands, and the other guitar player in the band picked me up one day, and he had a CD in his car playing, and I was looking at him going, what is this? It was like so thunderous in his little Honda Civic. I was like, what the heck is this? And it was, of course, Creatures of the Night playing. And he goes, oh, you never heard this CD? So he showed it to me, and it was the one with the original cover. It wasn't the 85 one. And from the first time I heard that I asked to borrow it, and he said, "Yeah, man, go ahead." And he didn't get that CD back for months. Like, I was just absolutely just taken with it. And back then, I was still relatively new to the whole production end of it. I was doing my co-op then, and so I was learning about it. But the more I dug into this album, the more I learned all kinds of fascinating things about it. And the production of this record is something that's still stuck with me to this day. The thunderous drumming, the guitar tones on there. Even the vocals sound really good on this record. I like the way they mixed it and stuff like that. It's just, and Gene's bass sound on here, even though we know Gene didn't play very much bass on this record, but the bass sound that they had on this record, really good, really, really punchy. It fits good with the drums. I mean, if you think about it, those drums are so ominous on this record that the bit of bass guitar in with that, where you can hear it, you have to do a bit of scooping in there and fiddling and twiddling with those knobs a bit to get the EQ just right. And it's just a fantastic record. I mean, sonically, I don't think they've done something that's been as good, in my opinion. And people may argue, and that's fine. But I think that's one of their sonic peaks as far as a produced record goes.
It's the real sonic boom, so to speak.
Yes.
Joe, what is it about the album that makes it so great for you? Is it the songs? Is it the sound? Is it that it has the backstory of coming off several years of not being so great? Or is it, come down to, I guess, what Mark is intimating, that they captured, I think Nico Bolas is the engineer who was well known in the industry for being incredibly talented at capturing individual instrumentation in the studio and absolutely being very dynamic, along with one of the other techniques that have become popular around this time. But what is it for you that makes it so great?
It's actually all the above. So when I purchased the album, like Ken, I was really excited that they returned to their roots, and they're even heavier. And to feature Eric Carr's drumming in such a powerful way was great. 35 also at the time, it was pretty cool because no one liked Kiss that much anymore. They fit into that underground scene. They fit in with the Saxons and the Maidens and the Metallicas that were just coming up, and not a lot of people liked them. So they were like an underground heavy metal band again. So I enjoyed that aspect. But now, 35 years later, it's still a great album. And what really blows my mind is when you dig deep into who played on the album, so many people came from a non-hard rock metal arena and created a heavy metal masterpiece. You had Robin Ford, who's a blues guitarist and doesn't even like Kiss. You have Steve Ferris from Mr. Mister playing lead guitar. Michael James Jackson produced Olivia Newton-John. Vincent Cusano was a writer for Happy Days and bouncing around. I mean, he had rock roots, but was more of a songwriter, singer, rock. More mainstream rock and roll. You had all these players. Bryan Adams, emerging Canadian pop star, wrote one of their heaviest, most iconic songs that gets played at sporting events to this day. So it blows my mind that all these non-metal people helped create a heavy metal masterpiece. And I agree with all you guys. It's one of my top, probably my second favorite Kiss album. Well, if you include Ace Frehley's solo album, it's my third favorite. But for band collaborations, comes after Rock and Roll Over for studio albums.
Yeah, and some of what you say there, some of the players, Jimmy Haslett, bass, Yellow Jackets, and Blackjack, of course. He is a monster player to be playing on a Kiss album, regardless of the session work. Mike Porcaro, as well, is a session player on this, and who knows who else. Ken, what is it that makes it so good for you?
Well, to add on to Joe's comments, with all those people, to me it shows how well Michael James Jackson produced this album, that he could, with all these different players and different songwriters, and how he was able to make it sound so cohesive, like it was one band really playing these songs, which is, that's just amazing to me when I think about it. The other thing that stands out is, like everyone knows, the drums, and it was really the first time we really got to hear or see what Eric Carr could do. Elder, was a little this and that, and he didn't play on every one of those, as we know. But you could really see in the rock world what he could do, and he was just awesome. I mean, just to show his talent on that. So it was finally, time to, put him out there and let the world see, who this drummer was. So as for the rest, the songwriting, everything, the vocals, guitar, everything is just fantastic. I mean, I don't know what else to say about it. It's just a fantastic album. It is, definitely in my top 5 for sure, like you guys. So
for me, it was always the sonic signature of the album, that it's so powerful, it's so dynamic. If you remember back in the day, if you had a double tape deck, you could put 2 separate tapes in, play one, it would flip over to the other side, and if you'd hit play on the second deck, then it would cue that one up afterwards. So it was like almost, you'd get 4 sides of tape without having to flip anything over and all that. I regularly had Asylum in one deck and Creatures in the other, and it was just the bombastic intro to Asylum, obviously for me, was King of the Nighttime World. And the first time I heard Creatures of the Night and the bombastic introduction to Creatures of the Night, and, even better production than Asylum, because, come on, as much as I love Asylum, I'm not going to say it comes anywhere near Creatures of the Night in terms of its sonic fidelity. It's a good poor man's copy of A Perfect Moment in Time, but it's nowhere near that level of depth. So those were my go-to albums for quite a long period of time, because once I discovered it and found out where it fit into the kind of the band's history, I was like, okay, it makes sense, and it almost seems that the two that are in between it, Lick It Up and Animalize, don't quite fit as well as Sonic Partners as Creatures and Asylum do, at least from my ears. Mark, what is it that grabs you the most? The one, I guess, thing that really makes it a great album to you?
I think it's got to be the songs. I mean, it's one of those rare Kiss records, again, where I don't find myself skipping songs on it. I really like everything on this record from beginning to end. And I mean, when I keep talking about the production of it, that's just really the icing on the cake, because if the songs were terrible and it had great production, then you still wouldn't want to listen to it if the songs sucked, right? But the songs are great. We all know that Paul Stanley said several times that he'll say every day that Creatures is a better album than Lick It Up, and I tend to agree with him. I like it better than Lick It Up. I find that I skip a couple songs on Lick It Up more than I do anything on Creatures, but it's I like the songs. It was kind of more aggressive. Even the messages were more aggressive, like Killer and Creatures of the Night and I Love It Loud, and and even back then, just like as I was showing in those little video clips, they were trying to come across with a little bit of a harsher image, and it seems like the media kind of picked up on a kind of a wrong image almost with them, with the whole, smashing of the records that they were doing back then and stuff like that, how making them turn out to be some kind of, Satanists, which they really weren't, obviously, right? But, I think that if anything, while the records didn't do anything monetarily, it didn't sell as good as their past works, one thing I know it did do is that I kind of started putting Kiss back into the cool books, especially when I was in high school and stuff like that. I know that a lot of people started, they were a bit more willing to pull out their jean jacket with their Kiss patch on it when they played, Lick It Up on MTV and stuff like that. So those records, I think, helped push them back into the cool ranks. You didn't have to drop your head anymore, like from, Dynasty or Unmasked, because, this is heavy, this is cool, this is what was kind of happening at the time. So, I love the songs on it, but I'll admit, liking those records, kind of also put a little bit of a stamp of coolness on you when you were in schools and stuff like that, because those songs at that point had a little bit more grit to it, right?
Yeah, and, their image, all of a sudden, you've got magazines like Kerrang! Or kind of coming out in Europe, and anyone who probably knows which Kerrang! issue I'm thinking of right now, which is the creature's gene on the cover of that Kerrang episode, and inside you've got the tank, you've got everything. You know, they're starting to get a little bit more visibility elsewhere. You know, Joe, what was it like in '82? You know, what were you reading in terms of rock rags, and were you seeing anything of Kiss there? I think you said earlier that, you know, Paul had to give an interview with basically a low fidelity fanzine to kind of get the message out.
So I primarily read 3 fanzines. It was Brian Slagle's out in L.A., and then Bob Muldowney's, and then Ron Quintana had one up in San Francisco called Metal Militia. But Bob Muldowney's was the only one that really gave any credence to Kiss. Kerrang definitely was my Bible. I mean, I couldn't wait for the new issue. I think it came out fortnightly, and when it came out, I mean, I had to go to the store and get it. And they gave Kiss a lot of great coverage, and you have to give them props for that. And that's where you get the majority, probably all of the information on the band from Kerrang, because they were still pretty much ignored in the United States until they took the makeup off for Lick It Up. So yeah, Kerrang was my go-to, most definitely, with all news considering heavy metal, and definitely covering Kiss.
Yeah, some of the American magazines that, I mean, we kind of lived, or I'm sorry, I'm projecting there, that you guys had in the 70s, Circus, you know, was kind of focusing on the Pat Benetars in 81, 82, and it kind of shifted out of, I guess, what it was, the big arena rock metal kind of groups.
It was amazing. You bring that up. There was an issue. I think it was Hit Parade. It was either Hit Parade or Circus. I got to look back. But they actually had an issue. It said, "Is heavy metal dead?" And they listed all the bands, you know, Aerosmith, Kiss. And a lot of those bands yet were on a decline, but they failed to ignore that all these bands were coming up in England and were giving a resurgence. And a band like AC/DC and a band like Van Halen were carrying the mantle into the early 80s. But yeah, as far as American magazines, everyone ignored Kiss by their early 80s.
And look at the music scene. I mean, you just touched on some of the bands, the big boys from the 70s. Aerosmith, where are they in 1982? Well, Rockin' a Hard Place comes out that year, but that's with 2 replacement guitarists. And it's not, I love the album, but it's not to the same level as, you know, even Night in the Ruts, or, you know, and it doesn't hold a candle to Rocks. Ted Nugent wasn't, Derek St. Holmes gone by that point. You know, the bands had kind of, Ted Nugent, and then, you know, other
Queen did their disco, you know, with Hot Space.
Yeah,
oh man,
Hot Space
in the United States. So yeah, was another one.
And even funny enough, when you mentioned it, Rush at that point had put out Signals, and while that's not a terrible record, there was a little bit of a backdraft because of the more extensive use of keyboards, even for that time, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because I always call Counterparts my Rush Creatures of the Night album, because that was a return to the hard rock. But,
that sounds a great album.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought there was worse to come from Rush than Signals. So I love that album. So, you know, Ken, what were you reading, and, you know, to keep up with Kiss in '82?
I know I had subscriptions to Circus. I don't know if I had one to Hit Parade, or might have had one to Hit Parade. But yeah, they kind of fell off the magazine, and if they were in that magazine or one of those 2 magazines, it was very short, a little snippet about whatever they were doing. They weren't, you know, on the front cover anymore, and a full article or anything like that. And you talk about Kerrang. Yeah, around that time, there was a record store that I used to go to here that opened. They had a lot of imports, and that's where I first learned of Kerrang, because they had some of the European magazines there, and I had that. I remember getting those magazines, Kerrang. I remember them giving a fantastic review about Creatures of the Night, and I was like, holy cow, someone actually is giving Kiss a good review, you know. And then I think even later in the year they have like a poll among their writers where they rate the top albums of the year. I want to say that was like number one. If it wasn't number one, it was very close to number one as the heavy metal, hard rock, heavy metal record of the year in Kerrang, which is pretty darn amazing. So, yeah, that was a magazine I got when I used to go down to that store, and that's where I also bought. Then I bought the import 12-inch singles of the Creatures of I Love It Loud or whatever, the one that's double groove, and then there's a regular one. So I had bought a few things there that were really cool at the time that you couldn't get at Tower Records. They didn't sell that at Tower Records. It was only at this import record store, which was very cool. It's too bad it went away.
Yeah, all those sorts of stores were the really fun places to browse to. Mark, I shared that little clip that someone had posted on the FAQ, and unfortunately the FAQ's crashed right now, so I can't find out who posted it. But how important do you think obviously that clip that I shared with you was someone talking about the kind of
gated drums
that were kind of discovered in 1979 and laid at the feet of, I think, Peter Gabriel, that it really became a practice and a very much like a signature of the sound of drums for much of the 1980s. And obviously it's very, very evident on Kiss's Creatures of the Night that was a technique that was new, that was probably implemented the very best way because they were never able to do it again. So you come to the engineer and the technique. How important do you think that is in term? And explain a little bit of it to, if you can, translate that into something that will make sense to someone who knows absolutely fuck all about music and recording.
Well, the whole thing with the gated drums is it was put around a sound where they use a type of reverb. Now, the thing is, what it has to do with not only the verb, but it has to do with something called a noise gate, which is just like, imagine like a doorway, right? Now the door is open, the sound's coming through. When the door shuts, there's no sound can come through. So when you adjust the knobs on it, what you're doing is when the drummer hits it, the door opens, and then you adjust it to where it shuts again so that there's no more of the sound ringing. So in the 70s, when you had those kind of dry drums where you'd hear it like dong, dong, like the snare drum would just echo and echo. When you adjust that, it would be like thunk, and it would just shut it. Like thunk, and it would just be like this little small hit of it, and then you would add all these kind of different monstrous reverbs to it that would give it that kind of a sound. And then what you would do as well is you would take the reverb, so instead of it trailing and going so long, like doo, you would put the gate on that verb so that the tail of it would stop as well. So it'd be like doosh, doosh. And that's how you got that kind of sound into it now. And that snare drum, Intruder, like they said, Peter Gabriel, PG3, that record, it starts with that sound, and that's, you got to thank Phil Collins, or you got to dread Phil Collins for coming up with them, right? But it was so signature to the early part of the 80s, especially up until 85 at least, and even longer they had it, but that snare drum and kick sound was everywhere, right? And if you think about it, the Simmons drums is just another example of that, but just electronically. So because those are very short but big, supposedly supposed to be big sounding drums, right? And they have those really stupid sound to them when you hit them, right? But it's something that was very staple to the whole sound of that time. And look at, like we said, we mock it, but look at how well they did it on Creatures of the Night. Like when that drum beat comes in with I Love It Loud, everybody's on their feet because it's such a anthemic, sound. And I'll tell you this, I've seen numerous bands and even Kiss tributes play that song in the club. But if you ain't got that sound and that verb on that kit, it just sounds like nothing. I've seen bands where they're playing and it's just like do do do. It's just so lame and like small. It's like, come on, Like now drummers try to use like trigger samples to maybe try to find that verb so that you can use it and incorporate it into the live drum sound, because you want to make it sound huge, right? Just like that, right? And like I said, it's something that people don't like, especially on the snare drums. I find that people used to say, oh, that's such an 80s snare drum sound. And lots of bands had it because it was such a big sound. everybody then wanted to go for the big production, and while the drums got bigger, unfortunately some things got smaller. You got these tiny little keyboard sounds, and the guitar sound sometimes got a little smaller, especially in like the new wave period and stuff like that. But they always kept that kind of a gated snare for bands, throughout that time period.
Yeah, and when you listen back to, when I saw that little feature, I went back and listened to the old KISS albums. And I'm like, okay, you've got a lot of, sometimes you get a little bit of the essence of what was later captured with the noise gate and the reverb, with, over application of maybe hi-hats or cymbals. Mm-hmm. You get a little bit of that metallic crispness coming through, but you still have more of a bounce to the drum sounds underneath that. And all of a sudden, I mean, this Creatures drums. Whenever you talk about Creatures or the Wendy O. Williams album, right, Joe? There's a crispness and an underlying power to all the music, all the instruments on the albums. But it's the drums that are the foundation. So that always strikes me, and it's fun to go into the technical side that it's captured by miking rather than anything else. Mm-hmm. But. Is that the only thing that really sets this album apart? I mean, we kind of come back to, or are the songs good enough? And what's left off this album, is it as good as it could have been? This album, knowing now what we know, that stuff like Back on the Streets was excluded, and recently the Warrior CD came out with the rehearsal of Betrayed, which was another song that was intended for the album. Nowhere to Run, of course, was included for it. Is Creatures as great as it could have been? Or, to a certain extent, is it overrated? Ken?
I don't know if it's I don't want to say it's overrated. It's not overrated. It's as good as people, say it is, most of the time. I'm not going to say it's their best album, but it's up there. As for how could have been good, it could have been,
it's my life.
It's my life. Mm-hmm. I always say that. It's like, it's my life. I know we're going to hear something from, we heard a snippet of Gene's Vault demo version. I don't know which version that is fully. Maybe it's all him.
That is Gene's demo. That is, I don't believe Vinny's on that, by the way.
Yeah. And so, man, if they use the music like that they had for Wendy O. Williams, It's My Life, with them singing, that would have been a fantastic song to have on there. And and we've talked about some of those other ones. Yeah, you talk about Betrayed, that's cool. Was it Back on the Streets? Yeah, there you go, Mark. And also Not for the Innocent, even with the trade-off vocals for Gene and Paul. So yeah, I think it could have been better. It could have been a little bit better. In this case, I wouldn't have minded if they added a couple more songs, kept the songs they had on there, added a couple more songs to put maybe an additional song on side one and an additional song on side two. It still would have been. It would have been even greater, I think.
I've said Wendy O. Williams, Joe, so I'm going to dangerous territory with you, asking if Creatures of the Night could have been better. What do you think?
I have to agree with Ken. I don't think it could be. The only way it would be better if he added a couple more songs. The only weak spot for me on the album is I Still Love You. I can listen to it, but it kind of grates. It was the bathroom song on that tour, but obviously Paul felt strong about it and had to put it in there. I don't know if that was about Donna Dixon or if it, as well as A Million to One was, but I would have loved to have seen It's My Life added to it. The Vinny songs on it would have been great too. But as a standalone album, I mean, this album I can listen to top to bottom, and I like every song a lot and love quite a few songs. Creatures is great. I Love It Loud. As much as it's overplayed, I do not get tired of it. And War Machine is just friggin' awesome, and I love when they play it loud. So can you improve it? Maybe a little bit, but not by much. It's that and Rock and Roll Over and Ace Frehley's album. It was pure perfection for me coming out of KISS. So, yeah. But to add a couple more songs, that would probably be the only way to really improve it. And I Still Love You, I can skip.
Yes, so it's like Knock 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 Universal Deluxe Edition. If now, if any like non-originals album deserves a deluxe treatment, it would be this one, even with the worm of Vinny's involvement in it. So Mark, that question to you: can it be better?
Well, let's put it this way: from any musician's perspective, when they look back to their record, they can always say, "Yeah, that could have been better." You always think it could be better. When the day I hear a musician who's completely satisfied with a record, I'll be shocked. But we also kind of forget a few things as well. I mean, during this period, they also had to do Killers for the record label because they were, because of the kerfuffle that happened before. And from what I keep reading on various books and stuff like that, they were against the wall. They were using multiple studios to get the record done. Time was against them, during this period too. So, they didn't have the luxury like some bands. Like I remember when I was watching the making of Hysteria, they were, Joe Elliott could be sitting there playing on a guitar and Mutt Lange comes in and goes, "That's the great song. We got to go and record that right now." Like they had that kind of advantage where they can go and drop in another song at the 11th hour. But Kiss, there was no way in hell. Like when they had the 9 songs bed tracked and they were working on it, that was it. There's no way, Eric could have came in and said, "Hey guys, I got a great song. Can we do this as well?" They probably look at him like he fell out of a tree or something, right? But they were time constrained too. So for what they did and how much time they had to do it, I think Creatures is unbelievable. It turned out fantastic. I mean, Gene was going through his personal trouble too. I think Diana Ross had left at that point, and that's why he didn't play some of the bass I read in certain books, right? So, who knows if that's true or not, but, look at all the things that supposedly were happening during that time, and they still made a record like Creatures, so hats off to them for that.
Yeah, I think if it gets expanded with any of those songs, I think it would have made sense to have included Nowhere to Run, just from the point of view that it wasn't included on any release in the United States, their home market. But by that time, they're probably so down in the dumps, they needed something to pick them up other than Cold Gin. And it was just like, get 9 songs out there. And it doesn't matter. What are the reasons why the other songs were left off? Well, they've talked about, It's My Life. I don't accept that answer. I think there must be something more to that story yet to come out about why it wasn't, why it was not included.
Paul didn't want 2 Gene singles on the album.
Yeah.
He's a co-writer. I would love to find out what the real reason is. I can understand that for Back on the Streets, it competes directly with I Still Love You, and is Paul, going to at that point let someone who's not even in the band yet? Don't forget, he's just a co-writer, basically a gunslinger. Have that sort of focus because that it's going to get commented on. So that one makes sense. What else? Betrayed. I just don't see that as a fully fleshed out song at this point. And
I guess. What about any of the other songs off of the Killers? I mean, they're not great, but I mean, I guess they could have been technically looked at, right?
I don't think any of them sound right to go on the album. I think they're a completely different session. Yes, the Killers session becomes the Creature sessions, but they're completely different. They're dynamically different. They don't sound right. They don't have the same production qualities, or they have the same producer, but they don't have the same engineering. So they're too different. How would they sound? Well, look what they do with the remixes for Nowhere to Run and what's the other one, Partners in Crime. Later on in the decade, they try and beef them up and make them sound right. But it's that moment in time, I think.
Yeah.
So Rocktober, is Creatures the best October Kiss album that's come out, Joe? Because what are your other choices? You get Alive 2, you have Hotter Than Hell, Sonic Boom, Monster, and Carnival of Shit.
What about Psycho?
Psycho came out in September.
That's right, okay.
Autumn was always the time of year for Kiss, really. If you look at the number of albums that came out,
so I mean, Hotter Than Hell has better songs, but it's just so muddy, and I like those songs so much better on Alive that if I want to hear Parasite, I'm going to go to the Alive version because Eddie Kramer's producing it. So I would have to say that Creatures is the best Rocktober release.
And I did forget to mention one there, and Hot in the Shade.
Yeah,
Yeah, Hot in the Shade.
I'll stand by this. I liked The Elder because it wasn't unmasked, and I liked Hot in the Shade because it wasn't Crazy Nights. So
Right.
that's my reasoning. But
holy shit! Here's some live news for you. The Atlanta Kiss Expo. Vinnie Vincent mini guitar replica coming from Axe Guitars, just like Bruce has just done that mini guitar of his crazy of. That's Joe's favorite album, obviously, Crazy Nights, Banana Guitar. Well, Vinnie Vincent's doing one. Mark, Rocktober. What are the albums there that you think are the best and the worst, and compare it to Creatures?
Well, I still have to say that Creatures is the best out of them. Again, kind of like what Joe said, Hotter Than Hell has some great songs on it, no question about it. I still like the songs off of Creatures more, surprisingly. But again, Hotter Than Hell will always have that bad mix and master against it, no matter how great the songs are, especially compared to Creature of the Night. Come on. And Alive 2, we talked about that, how much of an ear bleeder that could be on headphones with that audience. It's like Beatlemania with pitch shifting in there. It's like, oh God, with that audience. But I don't think it's a same level in my opinion. I mean, I think Alive 2 is a great record and a great release from other angles, but not musically. And I mean, don't even get me started with Sonic Boom and Monster. I mean, I thought Sonic Boom, they had the right idea, but the end result was not good. Again, it was one of those, things that all those guys like me go on those production message boards. All those engineers who complain and bitch about the loudness wars and saying how everything got turned into audio sausage and complaining about it, right? Well, Sonic Boom is one of those records, and same with Monster. They're overcompressed as shit, and they're every engineer that I know would hate to have their name attached to that, because it's just not what you want to do when you release music, right? So those two are out. Carnival of Souls. I mean, again, if it was not a Kiss record, if there was another band that Bruce was making, that was supposed to be directly in competition with Alice in Chains or something, yeah, it would be a good record, but it's not a good Kiss record. Hot in the Shade, what am I going to say? That's just a demo record, right? I don't think it compares anywhere near Creatures of the Night. So Creatures is hands down the best.
Nicely put. I'm going to be contrary. I'm going with Hotter Than Hell, even with the poor production. I'm obviously one of those bad Johnny-come-lately fans who doesn't know his place and is going to go with an era which he wasn't even a part of. And at 3 years old in 1974, I wasn't able to make any decisions. I was probably still eating paper. But there we go. I'm gonna pick Hotter Than Hell strictly because of the classics in it. For all of the negatives, when I look at Rocktober in terms of Kiss, Sonic Boom and Monster, I like the songs. I would love them to take the original, I don't know what it is in Pro Tools, whether it gets compressed as it goes in and is fucked forever, or whether it could be given to a real producer / engineer to do something with and salvage, because there are just some audio flutters that I can pick up when I'm listening to particularly Sonic Boom that I'm like, it makes it an unappealing listen, which really ruins what in some cases are some very good songs. I'm not going to say it's perfect. I'm not going to say that there are some lows on the album that are pretty damn low, but in terms of it being a band in 2009, 35 years into a career, making an album, it was a great return to form. It was pretty vibrant. It wasn't too cliched. Monster, the same's the case. Except I find the production even worse. And the highs higher, because Long Way Down is a great song. So those ones don't really come into any contention vying for the best of Rocktober. Carnival of Souls, sorry, nowhere near. There's still a few songs in there that I like. Hot in the Shade, for what it was, Joe said it best, it wasn't Crazy Nights. And I had the same sort of reaction back then when I got it, I was listening to it in Singapore, and I was like, well, I like Long Cold Winter. It starts off with a bluesy, Bad Seamstress blues, falling apart at the seams, and here's Kiss now doing the same thing on their album, and I thought that was perfectly fine. But in terms of overall product, no, nowhere near. So I'm going with Hot in the Shade. Yeah. I'm going with Hotter Than Hell. They both start with hot, damn it. So,
with the albums that you brought up, like Sonic Boom, I remember just being so ticked off. I was so angry when I purchased it because there was so much hype surrounding the Walmart aspect, and there was going to be these Kiss corners, and I was expecting half of Walmart to be filled with Kiss stuff, and it was just shoved in the back. And then you come home and listen to it, and it was okay, but then you have Paul Stanley ripping off Poison, who ripped off Kiss, and then Anomaly was released at the same time, and I was like, you know what, I'm listening to Anomaly instead of this, because I don't know, Sonic Boom just rubbed me the wrong way at the time. Carnival of Souls I was listening to already because so many people already had passed out the demo.
Yep.
It was kind of you bought the CD just to buy it because it was Kiss, but you heard it already. I really don't have a hatred for the album. I think there's a lot of good things on there. Mm-hmm. Alive 2, you guys covered it, extremely well on that one episode a few episodes ago. The one thing about Alive 2, though, is Larger Than Life, I think, is a song that would have fit on Creatures of the Night. Because it had, Gene Simmons is going for that cashmere drum sound, and that sounds like it would be a Creatures of the Night song. It could fit on that album. So on side 4 of Alive 2, Larger Than Life is definitely a highlight for Gene Simmons in his songwriting.
Yeah, I think you just mentioned one of the interesting things about Sonic Boom, and I managed to not go into Walmart. In San Francisco, Walmart's not allowed. It's strictly verboten. And, I had to mail order from them to get it, and then of course I got a copy from England, which came in a jewel pack, because I hate those freaking digipacks with a passion. So a jewel case is the version that I have left. But it did kind of bother me that Never Enough, was it Never Enough that rips off, or Dangerous? Which one rips off Poison? I can't remember.
I think it's Never.
Yeah. And then of course Gene rips off himself with I'm an Animal, which
right.
Sure.
which of course had been done by Peter Criss in part. So yeah, that was kind of bothersome. But I was happy for one reason, that all of a sudden Psycho Circus was not the final Kiss studio album. And I remain happy in that sense, though I hope Don't Touch My Ascot ends up being the final Kiss recorded song. Ken, what rocks your boat in Rocktober?
Yeah, well, for me, it's Creatures of the Night. It's going to be the top one, the best one that was released, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, Hotter Than Hell, like I said, have great songs, but the one thing, I mean, if I think about it, I listen to Creatures of the Night a lot more than I listen to Hotter Than Hell, as far as albums go. The Hotter Than Hell is, I would say is a close second for October releases. Creatures of the Night was just perfect. I mean, just the sound, the cover, October, Halloween, Monsters. I mean, it just all, the whole thing worked. Unfortunately, the people didn't get it out there. It didn't work for them, I guess, or it was too late. Kiss, they had already, jumped ship. So, otherwise, what's really big for me is, of course, the sentimental, Kiss Alive 2 is a big deal for me. Halloween, and I know I bought it around that time in October, and it was my first album, so first Kiss album. So it ranks up there. Hot in the Shade, again, I agree, you guys. It wasn't crazy nights. It was at least somewhat a return to form, even though it was a lot of demo, kind of sound to it. A little too long, a little bit too much filler on it, but otherwise it was okay. Then Carnival of Souls is good, and like Mark says too, it's a good album, but it's not a good Kiss album. It's not a Kiss. It's just not Kiss. It's a good album though. Otherwise it could stand on its own. And then Sonic Boom and Monster. Yeah, I remember going to Walmart in the morning on that day it came out and looking for that Kiss corner, and it's like there's no Kiss corner.
Yeah,
it's like a Kiss over in the middle side aisle somewhere. There was something over the Kiss M&Ms were over here, and this
Kiss M&Ms. They didn't even have T-shirts. They had the Kiss M&Ms, a couple packs of Kiss M&Ms, and then a display with the CDs.
Yeah, the cards, the little Kiss cards. I remember those little. They had some kind of baseball type cards too. I bought one of those packages, and I bought Kiss M&Ms, which I still have. But then that was far away from another partner store where they had they were putting out Sonic Boom shirts. They had Sonic Boom shirts and Kiss Destroyer shirts, T-shirts. I bought actually Kiss Destroyer shirt. I didn't buy the Sonic Boom shirt. But yeah, it was just like, and then I had to go to the music department to get the CD. So it's like, what the heck, But anyway, that was kind of a letdown. Though the album, I actually enjoy the album more now than I used to. I think it's a lot better than I thought it was back when I first got it. There was a couple standout songs I liked a lot, but I think it's production-wise, I think it's better than Monster. Monster is just, come on.
Oh, come on.
Monster brick wall, Though there's a lot of good songs on there, Julian, like you say. I mean, I love Freak. Long Way Down, I love that song. I just think there's something missing on Monster. I don't know what it is. There's something that bothers me about it, other than the sound itself. There's just something, I can't put my finger on it, but something doesn't sound Kiss to me. It just doesn't sound enough Kiss to me. I can't even explain it, but it's something. Maybe I'll figure it out someday. There's a couple good songs. Like I said, it's just something missing there. So Creatures of the Night is the one for October. Rocktober.
Maybe Monster has too much backbone slippage.
That might be.
One of the things with Sonic Boom, and obviously, they included that disc of re-records on it, which, someone was mentioning, and I don't know whether it was as a result of an interview. I know I was working on something recently with that. And they said, surely Sonic Boom is gold certified by now in the United States, having shifted, I think the last sound scans were 370,000, which if you multiply by 2 for the discs, would mean that it's at least gold. Well, unfortunately, I did some checking into that, and one of the things that comes up is, just like Symphony, where people thought that was going to be gold because it had 2 discs in it, it was not ever certified gold because it misses one core requirement for the RIAA. It does not contain 100 minutes of music. And the exact same thing gets Sonic Boom. It's not 100 minutes when you add the 2 discs together, even though it's got 2 CDs. That is not the basic thing for modern certifications. So Sonic Boom is going to have to do it honestly if it's ever going to get a gold certification. And who knows, maybe it will. But I think Kiss signed such a bad contract with Walmart for that distribution deal. I think the evidence of that, all that you need to say is, well, it wasn't included in the Monster box set, so they obviously weren't allowed to reproduce it outside of, where they did a limited private run of the, the 5 colors vinyl for it. So, very disappointing. Sonic Boom. How often, and this is what I do to it, and Joe mentioned Anomaly, Sonic Boom, and BK3. Just jumble them in and randomize them in Winamp, and I find that to be a thoroughly enjoyable listening experience because you get Ace's shit coming in. Yeah, that just makes the world a better place. Of course, his album did not come out in Rocktober. His came out in September of that year. So, the tours of all of these Rocktober albums. Creatures always figures very high on people's want list for a pro shot to emerge, because obviously it's Vinnie Vincent on tour with the band. The Alive 2 tour, absolutely stunning. That is the height of Kiss. Hotter Than Hell tour, you get Winterland, which is obviously them before they're famous, but starting to find their feet on the road. The Hot in the Shade tour. Well, it doesn't start in Rocktober, unfortunately, for those people who got to see it, but is absolutely amazing in terms of the breadth of the set list that they performed. That was them embracing the past, finally, thanks to the failure of Crazy Nights, in my opinion. Carnival Souls, there is no tour. So what do you guys think? Can you pick a best tour of the Rocktober albums, and why? Mark, let's start with you on that.
Well, out of the ones that I saw them for Sonic Boom and for Monster. So those are the ones that I actually saw. And I enjoyed them. They were great. Before that, I saw them for the Reunion and for Psycho Circus as well. But I didn't get to see them, obviously, back in the day for like Creatures, which I would have loved to have seen because, you know, while I saw footage of the Kiss cruise when they did the recreation of the stage set there and stuff like that, I thought that was pretty cool. That's something I kind of mildly regret not taking a chance and maybe going on that Kiss cruise, because that's probably the only chance you would have had to go see that era of a show, and not having been in 1982 to see it like Ken did, right? But I think that for me, that's the one that nags at me. I would have loved to go and see that tour. I mean, I have video for Hot in the Shade, and while that's a fantastic tour, they did a lot of great songs during that tour, and they had the Sphinx set and all that, so that was really awesome as well. It just doesn't have that same vibe to me. Like, there's something about Kiss and makeup and that whole stage setup that really kind of pulls me. I don't know. I can't explain it. It's just I would have loved to have seen it. Because he did it on the cruise and I didn't see it, it kind of bugs me that I didn't go and see it. But I think that's the one for me that I would put my, I would like to see. Because the other ones that I've seen are good. Sonic Boom was a good, was a good tour. Monster was pretty good. But I mean, already they were starting to incur those little problems that we'll not talk about because we've heard it 100,000 times here. And, they've already gotten past that point, right? But I would have loved to have seen them at that time in their career when they were refired up to get themselves back on top again. And that's always an interesting time to see a band, because when you've been knocked off the top of the hill and you want to get back on top, that's when you're going to see them giving you their all-out best performances, and they're going to try their hardest to make you remember them again, right? So that's when I would have loved to have seen them.
See, my answer is very quick. I would say my favorite tour of this, and obviously, again, I wasn't alive. Oh, I was alive, but I wasn't going to concerts when I was 3. I wasn't in this hemisphere, I don't think. Hotter Than Hell. If I could go to any one of those, just because they're hungry, they haven't made it yet, and so much of my life is, as a Kiss fan, has been Kiss as a successful band that's made it, that's over the top, that is an icon, that is a legend. To have experienced them, I can't even go with the Live 2, even that being the height of Kiss for visually. Super Kiss, before they jumped the shark with Dynasty. I can't even go there. I want to see them hungry, and you can never go back to that point again. So any of you that saw the band through the mid part of the Dress to Kill tour are just very, very lucky people to have experienced them at that time. Sonic Boom and Monster, they just leave a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth, not because they weren't good shows. They were still fantastic Kiss shows. They were just part of the decline for me of the industry, of it becoming so expensive and torturous to go to these events to see the bands that you love, and be spending several $100 on the experience. Yeah, you get a great show. I've always get a good show out of Kiss, even to this day, even if I, niggle and pick at some of the things that go on during the shows. They're still a great thing to go and see. But Hotter Than Hell for me. Joe, what about you?
I will say this to my grave. So I've seen hundreds of concerts. I've seen Kiss over 30 times. starting from the Dynasty Tour. The best concert I've ever gone to was Creatures of the Night, Dubuque, Iowa, in front of 3,000 fans with the Plasmatics opening up. And they played like they were in Brazil in front of 200,000 fans. They put on a kick-ass show. It was awesome. We were up front. We felt the flames, the heat of the flames. It's the greatest concert I've ever been to. So that's number one. Hot in the Shade is in my top 10 of all-time concerts. And I tell people, I say, one of the best times I ever saw Kiss was without makeup, because that set list and that stage show, too, was great with Leon's The Sphinx. That set list, I remember I bumped into a friend I hadn't seen by accident. I hadn't seen him in a few years, and his name was Jim. And I was like, holy shit, Jim. And then all of a sudden they open up with I Stole Your Love, and we almost crapped our pants. It was like, they're back, they're back again. That was a great show, too. So that's a top 10 concert of all time for me as well. But Creatures, hands down, that tour and that show just blew me away. And I will go to my grave saying that's the greatest concert I've ever seen.
What was it? Was it the power? Were they hungry? Were they desperate? I mean, 3,000.
It was crazy. We had to drive because I was at school, and my roommate wanted to go, and we found someone else with a car. We were like the only 3 people that liked metal on campus, and we drove like an hour and a half on 2 hours on this, Iowa highway, and in ice and snow, and we get to this small venue because they didn't play these. They played a lot of secondary and tertiary markets, and we get in there, and there was hardly anybody there. But Wendell Williams came out with the Plasmatics and just kicked ass. It was total heavy metal, put on a great show, and then Kiss came out, and they just put on a show. And in hindsight, thinking, they could have just phoned it in because it was such a small crowd, but no, they were playing like they were playing in front, at Tiger Stadium with so much energy, so much fire, so much flames, and we were right there up close. It was great because when I saw them in the Dynasty Tour, I was all the way in back, and I wasn't too thrilled with the set list. This was, man, they were playing the kick-ass songs. They had a kick-ass album. The energy was there, and it was just great.
Awesome. I always love when we get you guys who actually went to these shows to recount them rather than me watching a video and analyzing it. Ken, here we go again, Ken. An opportunity for you to remind us all about the 3 Creatures shows that you went to, of course. But which of these Rocktober ones? You've been to other shows. What is your pick?
Yeah, still, it's the Creatures show is going to be the first Creatures show at the Irvine Amphitheater in Long Beach, or Irvine, I guess it's Irvine. I was in Long Beach area, California, and that was the first show. Driving down the day before, driving 6 hours to get to Southern California, and it was like Joe said. It was. I mean, they were hungry. They came out. They were on a rampage. They were moving around the stage a lot. It's crazy stuff. Towards the end, Paul Stanley got on Gene's shoulders at the end of our concert, which is never seen before or since actually. And even with the new guitars, Vinnie Vincent, it was just, man, it was just in your face the whole time, and the stage that went with it was just absolutely fantastic, with the moving turret and the treads moving and the fog coming out of the pipes and the blasts, the bombs when they fired the turret, the gun turret kind of thing. So it was just fantastic. While that's the best show, and I saw them 3 times, right? 2 in a row there, and then about a week later up in San Francisco, I would trade 2 of those Creatures shows for one Hotter Than Hell at Winterland. I would have loved to have been there. I mean, we see the tape. I would just love to have been at that show. I just can't imagine how awesome it would have been to be there. I mean, I get so excited just watching it on tape, and how I feel. And they're hungry, like you said, Julian. They are hungry. They're still not there. They're still trying to reach that, plateau, but they're not there yet. And so they're working as hard as they can with all the signature moves from Sean Delaney and all that stuff. Gosh, I trade like I said, 2 of those 3 Creature shows I would trade to have seen that one show there.
There's only one thing that could make the Winterland better for me, and I hope that, one day an audience recording from that show surfaces, so that can be a matrix created between the soundboard and the audience. So you get a bit more of the audience kind of feel for that show. That would just make that absolutely perfect for me. Rocktober, we're very lucky with KISS. Obviously this year we're celebrating the 40th anniversary of Alive 2. The 35th of Creatures, and Carnival of Souls, 25 years. No, 97, 20 years. So 20th anniversary of Carnival of Souls. I mean, that just boggles the mind. And I find it very sad and melancholy to say the 5th anniversary of Monster, which is the last album that they've put out. Time has flown, and they had a little creative spark going there. I wish they had been able to do the originals, 3, have a 3rd album in that set, but I don't see that really happening now. So final thoughts. Rocktober, hell of a month. You guys who saw the Creatures tour, as we're predominantly been talking about that, you're lucky. You saw the Plasmatics open. What a hell of a powerful opening acts they had on that tour. You had Motley Crue, Ken. And of course, Night Ranger opened other ones, and Night Ranger was a heavier band with their first couple of releases as well. Would have been a fantastic performance to see, especially when you look at some of the live videos from their early period that do circulate. They're a good band. So, Rocktober, that is our look back at it. For all of you people listening today, what are your, what's the biggest thing that KISS ever gave you in Rocktober? Is it Creatures? Is it Hot in the Shade? Hotter Than Hell? Alive 2? Sonic Boom? Monster? Did I miss any this time? Carnival Souls. Yeah. And then Creatures, the specific question is, I guess, can Creatures be better than it was, or is it just all those extra songs? Would they have, made it less focused, less good for your personal taste? So, wherever you listen to this, chime in, comment on our opinions. Give us yours, and we're going to have a conversation. But for now, from Joe, from Mark, from Ken and myself, thank you for joining us. Thank you for spending time listening to the KissFAQ podcast today. All sales are final. There are no refunds. If you'd like, look us up on Facebook or come over to the KissFAQ message board and discuss the topic we broadcast today. Don't forget to rate us on iTunes, Spreaker, or wherever you've listened to the show. We hope you'll join us again.